For only $335,000, my own daughter turned me into a stranger in the empire I had spent a lifetime building. That number may look like an ordinary amount to some, but for me, it was the price of betrayal, the value she placed on her father's sweat, tears, and sacrifices. I still remember the day clearly. The papers were placed in front of me, shining white, covered with legal lines that I could barely read because my eyes were too heavy with trust. My daughter stood before me, smiling softly, speaking gently. "It's just routine, nothing complicated. A small adjustment so the company runs smoother." Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed, and for a moment I wanted to believe every word. But inside, something whispered. A small voice told me to stop, to question. Yet I silenced it, because this was my daughter, the same little child whose hands once held mine tightly while crossing the road, the same voice that once called me with innocence. How could she betray me? How could blood deceive blood? I signed those papers. My hands shook. My heart hesitated, but my love blinded me, and with that pen stroke, my life shifted forever. The very next morning, when I entered the company gates like I had for decades, the guards lowered their heads and stopped me. My nameplate was gone. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, was sitting in my chair, smiling at the directors, announcing herself as the new owner. The company I built brick by brick had been taken away from me in one night, with my own signature. I froze in disbelief. My lips trembled as I shouted, "This is mine! I built this from nothing. You can't just throw me out." But the law didn't care for my words. The contracts were legal. My signature was clear, and my daughter, with her cold eyes, simply said, "Father, you've done enough. It's my time now. Please don't embarrass yourself." Those words sliced deeper than any blade. I felt the weight of betrayal, heavier than death itself. That night I sat alone in my small rented apartment. The silence screamed louder than any storm. The walls looked empty, and the future looked darker than ever before. I had lost everything, not to strangers, not to enemies, but to my own blood. Yet as I stared into that emptiness, something inside me refused to die. I realized that I had not built my empire with just ink and contracts. I had built it with sweat, with scars, with sleepless nights and endless sacrifices, and those things could never be stolen from me. My daughter thought she had won, but what she didn't know was that betrayal can destroy a man's peace, but it can also awaken his strength. The following weeks were the hardest of my life. Friends disappeared. Relatives avoided me. The phone that once rang endlessly with calls of respect and favors now stayed silent. The man who was once invited to every table was now treated like a shadow. But I didn't break. Instead, I observed. I watched silently as my daughter enjoyed her stolen empire. She threw parties in halls where I once worked late nights. She wasted money on luxuries, ignoring the responsibilities that came with power. She smiled for cameras, believing she had defeated me, and in those moments, my pain turned into determination. I began collecting every piece of evidence I could: transactions, emails, secret records, witnesses, everything she thought she had erased. I worked quietly, patiently, because I knew arrogance is a blindfold, and she was too blinded by her own pride to notice me moving in the shadows. At first, I only wanted answers. I wanted to ask her face to face, why? Why betray the one who gave you life, who sacrificed everything for you? But the more I watched her cruelty, the colder her heart became, the more the fire inside me grew. This was no longer just about money. This was about dignity, about a father crushed by the very daughter he raised. So I waited, patiently, silently, because the day would come when the same pen that destroyed me would destroy her. And when that day arrived, she would understand the true cost of betrayal. I still remember that night. Sleep had left me, peace had left me, and even the walls around me felt heavy with betrayal. My daughter's cold smile, her confident voice, the way she waved those papers in front of the board, it all kept replaying in my mind. She thought she had destroyed me with a pen. She thought she had written the last chapter of my life. But she didn't know one truth. I had fallen before, I had risen before, and I was ready to rise again. The next morning I walked through the same streets where my journey once began. The air was dusty, the ground uneven, but something about that place reminded me of who I really was. I was not a man defined by wealth, nor by an office, nor by titles. I was a man who had built an empire out of nothing, with his own two hands. And if I had done it once, I could do it again. For weeks, I kept myself quiet. No noise, no big moves. I lived in a small rented room, the kind of place where the paint peeled off the walls and the fan squeaked like it might fall any minute. My dinner was just dry bread and a glass of water. But while my daughter celebrated in golden halls, I was sharpening my patience in silence. I started collecting things, small things, old emails, contracts, forgotten witnesses. Every careless mistake she made became a stone in the foundation of my revenge. She was arrogant, and arrogance leaves footprints everywhere. At the same time, I began began meeting people, old partners, workers, friends. Some of them had been humiliated by her pride. Others had lost trust in her careless leadership. When they saw me again, their eyes lit up with respect. They still remembered the man who treated them not as tools, but as family. One night in a quiet cafe, an old business partner leaned across the table and whispered, "We were waiting for you to return. Without you, this empire feels like a body without a soul." Those words burned inside me like fire. Meanwhile, my daughter was busy drowning in her own greed. She threw parties that lasted till sunrise, her laughter echoing in halls filled with strangers. She bought luxury cars, diamonds, designer clothes, things that shine for a moment but fade just as fast. She thought money was power, but she never learned that respect is stronger than money. She walked into offices late, shouting at workers, ignoring advice, mocking the very people who had once lifted her father on their shoulders. Slowly, whispers began spreading. Doubt entered the hearts of the directors, but she was too blind to see. And I watched, patiently, quietly. Every night, I wrote in my notebook names, dates, deals, connections. My small rented room became a war room. Papers covered the desk, red lines connected names on the wall, and every page told me the same story. Greed leaves cracks, and cracks always break. There was one evening I will never forget. I was sitting alone, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. My pocket was empty, my stomach hungry, but my heart whispered one thing: patience is the weapon that never misses its target. I closed my eyes and saw her face again. Not the face of a betrayer, but the face of a little girl who once held my hand tightly when she was afraid of the dark. A father's heart is strange. It breaks, it bleeds, but it never stops beating for his child. I didn't want revenge just to see her fall. I wanted her to realize the value of what she had thrown away. Still, justice had to be served. Months passed. Slowly, I built something new, a small company under a different name, with workers who believed in me. No luxury, no show-off, just honesty, loyalty, and discipline. Step by step, deal by deal, I rose again. One night, I looked at my reflection in the cracked mirror of my room. My beard had grown whiter, my eyes sharper. I wasn't the same man who signed those papers with trembling hands. I was stronger now, and my time was coming, because I knew one thing. She had taken my empire, but she had not taken my experience. She had my wealth, but not my wisdom, and wisdom always outlives wealth. The turning point came on a rainy evening. I was handed a folder by one of my old allies. Inside were documents, proof of illegal transfers, shady contracts, money laundering, all under her name. My hands didn't tremble this time. Instead, a calm smile spread across my face. The pen that had once destroyed me was now about to destroy her. But this was not just about revenge. This was about dignity, about teaching her that betrayal has consequences, that arrogance has a price. I whispered to myself, the storm is ready. Now it's just a matter of time. And so I waited for the perfect day, the board meeting. The directors were already tired of her careless leadership. Whispers of doubt had turned into open complaints. She, blinded by her ego, didn't care. She walked into that meeting room wearing a diamond necklace worth more than a house, her laughter loud, her words arrogant. She didn't know what was coming. The doors opened, and I stepped in. Her face froze. The laughter died in her throat. For a moment, the entire room went silent, as if even the air had stopped moving. "Father, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice shaking for the first time. I placed a thick folder on the table. The sound echoed like thunder. "Maybe I don't belong here anymore," I said calmly. "But the truth does." One by one, I opened the documents. The directors leaned forward, their eyes widening with every page. Contracts, bank statements, secret transfers, proof of every crime she had committed. Her hands trembled, her face turned pale. She tried to speak, but no words came out. One director slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! We trusted you, and you betrayed us. This empire doesn't belong to greed. It belongs to dignity." She looked at me, her eyes filled with fear. And in that moment, she finally understood. The same pen that once gave her power had now taken it all away. That night, the same guards who once stopped me at the gate now escorted her out of the building. Her head hung low, her steps heavy, her glittering necklace shining uselessly under the streetlights. I stood by the window of that office, watching her walk away. My heart was heavy. Victory was mine, but it didn't taste sweet, because no matter what she had done, she was still my daughter. I whispered, "You destroyed me with your own hands, and now you destroyed yourself with the same hands." The city outside was silent, but inside me, a storm had finally calmed, because justice had been served. That night, after the boardroom storm, I sat alone in my new office. The papers of justice were still spread across the table, but I wasn't looking at them. My eyes were lost in the city lights outside the window. I had won. The empire I built was mine again. The directors had bowed their heads in respect once more. The guards saluted me as I walked past. Everything I had lost, I had taken back with patience, with truth, with proof. But victory did not taste sweet. It tasted heavy, like iron in my mouth, because no matter how much I tried to silence it, one question kept echoing in my heart. Was it worth it? Was it worth losing a daughter to save an empire? I remembered her face when she was a child, running to me in the rain, laughing when I lifted her high in the air, crying when I left for long business trips. I remembered the nights I stayed awake to pay her school fees, the days I skipped meals just so she could eat better. And now, those same eyes had looked at me with arrogance. Those same hands had signed away everything I built. Revenge had brought me justice, but it could not erase love. Days turned into weeks. My company started breathing again. Workers smiled when they saw me. Partners trusted my words. And slowly the empire began to shine. But inside me, a storm was still alive. One evening as I was leaving the office, I overheard two workers whispering. "Did you hear?" one said. "She's broke now. No money left. No friends. They say she drinks every night, wandering the streets like a stranger." My steps froze. For a moment I couldn't move. My chest tightened as if 1,000 knives had pierced it at once. That was my daughter they were talking about. My blood, my flesh, my child. I could have ignored it. I could have told myself, this is justice. Let her suffer. But a father's heart is not made of stone. That night I went searching for her. The streets were wet from rain. The lamps flickered weakly, and the city seemed colder than ever. I finally found her sitting on the steps of an old building. Her clothes were dirty, her hair messy, her eyes red from sleepless nights. She held an empty bottle in her hand, her shoulders trembling. For a moment she didn't even recognize me. When she finally looked up, her lips trembled. "Father," she whispered. "I destroyed everything." My throat tightened. Tears filled my eyes, but I swallowed them. I sat beside her, placed my hand gently on her shoulder and said, "You didn't destroy me, daughter. You destroyed yourself. But even now, you are mine, and if you truly wish to change, I will help you stand again." At those words, she broke. She cried like the little girl she once was, hiding her face in her hands, sobbing in my arms. And in that moment, I realized something far greater than revenge. Sometimes, forgiveness is the real victory. The next morning, I brought her home. The directors, the workers, even my friends looked at me with surprise. Some whispered, "Why forgive her, after all she did?" But I only smiled and answered, "Because justice ends wars, but forgiveness ends pain." I gave her no company shares, no power, no luxury. Instead, I gave her a desk in a small corner office. "If you want to rise again," I told her, "earn it with your own hands, not through betrayal, not through shortcuts, but through patience, respect, and hard work." She lowered her eyes and nodded. For the first time in years, I saw humility on her face. Weeks passed. She struggled at first, handling files, answering calls, dealing with workers who looked at her with suspicion. But slowly I saw her changing. She came to the office on time. She listened more, spoke less. She treated workers with respect. One evening, as I was leaving the office, she came to me with teary eyes. "Father," she whispered, "I finally understand what you built. I finally understand what I destroyed. And I am sorry." I placed my hand on her head and said, "Dignity, daughter. Wealth can be stolen. Titles can be taken. But dignity must be earned. And once you have it, no one can destroy you." That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Not because I had taken revenge, not because I had regained my empire, but because I had regained my daughter. And maybe that was the greatest victory of all. After everything that had happened, the betrayal, the fall, the revenge, and the forgiveness, I realized something deeper about life. We spend years building empires, chasing wealth, collecting cars, houses, and luxuries. But when betrayal strikes, none of these things stand with us. What stands is only patience. What survives is only dignity. I had been broken by the one I loved most. My own blood had turned against me. The empire I built with sweat and sleepless nights had been snatched away with a single signature. For many men, that would have been the end. But for me, it was the beginning of understanding. When my daughter betrayed me, I thought justice meant destroying her in return. And in some ways, I did. I showed her that arrogance always breaks, that greed always collapses. But when I saw her sitting alone on that street, broken and lost, I realized something greater. Revenge can win battles, but forgiveness wins hearts. And a father's heart, it is never truly at peace when his child is lost. Months passed, and my empire stood strong again. Workers were loyal, partners trusted me, and the directors respected my leadership. But this time, I ruled differently. I ruled not with power, but with humility. Not with fear, but with respect. My daughter worked in the corner office, slowly learning the value of sweat and honesty. I watched her struggle, fail, rise and struggle again. And with every failure, she grew humbler, stronger, wiser. One evening, she came to me with tired eyes and trembling lips. "Father," she said softly, "I don't want wealth anymore. I don't want diamonds, cars, or titles. I just want your respect back." At that moment I smiled, the kind of smile I hadn't felt in years. I placed my hand on her head and said, "You have my respect, daughter. Not because of what you own, but because of who you are becoming." Life had come full circle. I had lost everything, and I had rebuilt everything. I had lost my daughter, and I had found her again. And through all this, I discovered the greatest truth of all. Wealth is fragile, but dignity is eternal. People may steal your money, betray your trust, or even try to erase your name. But if you hold on to patience and dignity, no one can truly destroy you. Tonight, as I sit in my office, looking at the city lights once more, I don't feel anger. I don't feel pain. I feel peace, because the storm has passed. And in its silence, I finally understand what life wanted to teach me. Revenge gave me justice, forgiveness gave me freedom, and patience gave me everything. So if you are listening to my story, remember this. Don't fear betrayal. Fear losing your patience. Don't chase revenge. Chase dignity. And above all, don't let wealth define you. Let respect define you. Because at the end of the day, empires rise and fall, but character remains. And with that, my story comes to an end. If you stayed with me through every word, if my pain touched your heart, and if my lessons gave you even a little strength, then I ask you for just one thing. Like this video, share it with those who need it. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more such powerful stories. Because sometimes one story can change a life. And maybe this story was meant for you.